Hey everybody, and welcome to D&D 5e TV Crafters Workshop. Today I'm going to show you how I made this. It is a ship made out of foam, polyfoam actually. You can see this right here. I made it out of a couple of bought items like the figurehead, which we'll talk about, and masts and whatnot. But I'm going to show you how to make this and how actually I did it. It was kind of an experiment. I based it off of, I wanted to have a ship for play, so I based it off of the old Spelljammer galleon. I had these sheets laying around, so it's got the deck plans on there. It's kind of got a guideline. I thought it would be a good start. Anyways, a few of the things that I used, of course, there's a little bit of this. This is a wood burning kit, so I use this on my dungeon tiles and whatnot. Didn't use it too much on this particular piece, but I used back here my hot wire foam cutter that I made. So you can check that out. Also, you're going to need a little bit of tacky glue. And Elmer's if you got it, but this is much better for what you're doing today. And then also this patch paint. And you'll notice this isn't just spackle. This is like light foamy spackle that just feels almost like, I don't know, like a dense powder. It's very nice to work with, and I'll show you why you want this stuff here in the upcoming video. I took a lot of shots as I was going along so we can take kind of a tutorial, a picture tutorial through the steps that I took to make it. Again, I really like this piece. It took me a while, quite a bit of hours, and I did polyurethane it at the end. I also made this stand, which you can see. Just a little stand to put it on. This was out of an old katana stand. You can see that there. So, all right, well, let's get into it. Let's start it off with just the materials. I was using this dense polyfoam. You can buy this at Home Depot in a big package of a bunch of sheets for like $7. And I use this because it is a little bit more dense than the packing polystyrene that you can find. So it's a little bit easier to cut, a little bit easier to sand. And we'll be using a belt sander as well, but you don't have to if you've got a palm sander. That might work out pretty good as well. So let's start with the picture tutorial. Right here we're making a ship, a galleon class ship. Right here on D&D 5e TV Crafters Workshop. Okay, so the first thing I did was to draw out the lower deck from one piece of foam and rough it out with the hot wire table cutter. Then I sliced a few 1/4-inch strips for the rails and used tacky glue to glue those rails in place, holding them down with pins. Now it's a good idea to let this dry first before putting on the outer layers so that you can get them to fit properly, or the upper decks rather. So using the lower deck as a template, I traced out the upper decks on the front and back, then added railings once more, again holding them down with the pins. So when that was dry, I broke out the belt sander and carefully shaped the hull. Now, this is a little tricky, and next time I'd probably partially form it on the belt and then use it and finish it with the palm sander, just to make sure I had smooth edges. Don't worry about the gaps yet, but yeah, so it's a little scary, a little tricky. Draw out what you can, and go ahead and use that belt sander or hand sander and sand out your hole. Alright, I went ahead and added a couple of top middle rails, leaving the sides open for a top deck entry where the stairs would be. Then I added stairs, a back wall, and a wedge shape for the lower deck doors. I used the sander again to get the proper angle for the doors from a square piece of foam. So you can see here I placed the bases for the masts and also made pop-out windows for the captain's quarters, again using the sander to get the right angles. Here I used a square piece of wood from the craft store and a couple of jump rings for handles. For the ship's wheel, I used a couple of small wood discs, glued them together with hot glue, and made handles from small beads. For the cargo bay toppers, I drew out a grid and used the wood burner to melt the holes. Now, this can be done a few different ways, kind of up to you, either from foam or matchsticks or whatever you prefer. Then I glued them down. In this shot, you can see I added windows, portholes, and accents on the rail sides. Then I used dowels as the mast and sanded down some chopsticks for the sail rigging. It's all coming together at this point. This shot shows the front of the bow fin I made, but later I had to cut away the top portion to accommodate the figurehead. And you can also see the chopstick I used for the prow. Now here's a shot of the rudder, back porthole, and pop-out accent. I cut out these rail accents by hand with the hot wire cutter. That was a tricky feat at best. Then I used a wood burner to finish the swirl accent. You can use this patch and paint to fill any gaps you might have left before painting. You can also use it before you sand. If they're bad, you can fill it, let it dry, and sand it again. Make sure you let it dry before priming though. And now it's time to prime it. This is exciting. I used black for this ship, and in hindsight, white would have been a better choice as there's not a lot of dry brushing textures to paint, and it took a couple of coats for the lighter colors to properly cover the black. So here you can see I used 3 different tones of brown to add contrast. One for the hull, one for the rails, one for the walls and stairs and stuff. I found this fairy figurehead at Michael's craft store. Now I attached it first, but I would recommend painting it first then attaching. You'll have to find a way to secure it to the hull as you can't use hot glue. I used pins that seemed to work well if I had a little support pushing up on the front of it, but the tacky glue seemed to work great and it held it pretty secure. And then I painted it brown and dry brushed it to look like carved wood. So in this shot you can see that I painted the windows and the deck. And here's another shot of me painting the pop-out windows. I used silver for the outline portion of the window and then a light blue for reflection. And then here you can see the other portholes are painted and some touching up of the dry brushing. And of course the wheel, so brown and a little bit of dry brushing to make the wheel happen. And the doors, of course I had to dry brush those, make them look like wood. Then I put a coat of polyurethane on the whole ship to give it a shine. This is all personal preference, but I really like the look of a polished hull. That's kind of up to you if you want to keep it matte or give it a shine. So here's the finished product. It is the Feywind. All you have to do now is crew it. Put some crew on there. Look, I made a little creature, sea creature coming at them. They're all fighting them. But yeah, it's to scale, 1 inch every 5 feet. I made some lanterns there for the back of the ship, but I had a lot of fun making this model. I hope you do too. It's the Feywind. Alright, that's it. That's the build. I had a lot of fun making this, and I hope if you try it, you do too. If you got any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments. I'll try and answer them as best I can. And I want to do a Viking ship next. That's kind of the plan. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit like, hit the subscribe button. And if you want to hear more about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, we've got a podcast, D&D 5e podcast. Go ahead and subscribe there at dnd5epodcast.com, or you can just listen to the show. So hopefully we'll have some more videos for you here soon, all about crafting, all about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition right here on D&D 5e TV. We'll see you next time.